learn some history. I wanted to know what you remember from World War II.
I remember the attack on Pearl Harbor. And I was really, really young. I was maybe 6 years old, and I was with my dad out in the car, and it came on the radio, and we listened to it on the radio. And I just remember that clearly, that everybody was, none of the grown-ups just couldn't believe it.
Well, did you have to do anything at night?
Oh yeah. Later on, after the war really got underway, you could not burn lights at night, especially down at the beach. When we would be down at Moorhead, we had to put blankets and bedspreads over the windows to cover up the light that would leak out of the house. If we turned on lights, they had to be completely blocked. Because there were, down at the beach, there were German submarines real nearby the coast at that time. And you also, with your cars, if you went out in the car at night, you had to have these blinds over the top part of your headlights, so that they'd only shine just down on the street, just a little bit. But you couldn't burn your headlights full strength. And even if you could, gas was rationed, so nobody could afford to buy gas, and everybody had little ration coupon books. And butter was rationed, sugar was rationed, everything was rationed. And in order to buy a pound of bacon and milk and all kinds of things like that at the grocery store, coffee was rationed. You had a allotment of ration stamps that you could use to, when you paid for it, you had to give them a ration stamp too, because each family could only buy a certain amount of those kinds of foods during the course of a month. And I had a cousin, his name was John Whitty Mitchell, and he was in the Air Force during World War II, and he was a bombardier in the Air Force. He dropped the bombs out of the American planes when they were bombing war zones and that kind of thing. And everybody was united in what they call the war effort. We had what was called a victory garden. Because of the rationing, we had to grow our own vegetables and stuff, and we had it out in the yard at our house, and we grew vegetables and that kind of thing. And we also, when I was in the first grade, second grade, third grade, along through there, we bought war bonds, and the war bonds raised money for the country to support the war, for making munitions and tanks and trucks and bullets and bombs and that kind of thing. And they had to finance it by buying these, what is that? About they we all bought war bonds, and we bought them at school. You would get a little book that had stamps in it, and if you were trying to buy a $20 bond or whatever it was, you'd buy, 50 cents a week and $1 a week or whatever, and stick those stamps in your book until you had enough to buy a war bond. And you remember the stockings I knitted for you and Joey for Christmas stockings?
Yeah.
Well, I learned how to knit when I was in the first grade as part of the war effort, and we would knit. Every student in the class would knit these little squares about yay big to be used to make blankets for the soldiers, So then we'd turn them in, and somebody would sew them all together until they had a full blanket, and then we'd do another one and another one and another one. It was real interesting. But I'm trying to think what else happened. I know another thing that I saw, and this was kind of scary. There were prisoners of war from both Germany and Japan. Those were the two main countries that we were at war with. And soldiers, German soldiers or Japanese soldiers who were captured would be brought back and placed in prisons, war prisons, and they would work on the roads. They'd have them out doing road gang work, and I remember seeing those things, and it said, they had a shirt on that said POW, and it stood for Prisoner of War. And they were out cutting grass and digging ditches and that kind of thing, just like they were in jail. And we had American soldiers who were also in jail over there in Germany or Japan. They were in prisoner of war camps. And so that's pretty much what I remember.
Thank you. Ration books, war bonds, wow! Here's my grandma. Could you tell us about the ration books?
I'd be glad to. This is a ration book that my holder that my family had, and everybody in the family had a ration book. And this was my mother's and my dad's and my grandmother's. My grandmother lived with us, and that's mine, and that was my younger sister's. And the ration books had looks like little stamps in them. And you were given so many, and you had to use those when you bought food or any kind of food, sugar or gas or any of the things that were rationed, and many, many things were rationed during the war. It meant that they had to have a way of people not using more than their share, because much had to be saved for the men who were fighting in the war. And those were ours, and these books must have been right at the end of the war, because I'm sure there wouldn't have been as many ration stamps in there. And there were ration tokens too when the war was on. And then in school, everybody worked toward helping for the war effort, and we had savings bonds. And in school, all the children had bond books, and you could buy you could buy stamps for 25 cents each. And I remember we would take them to school, take 25 cents to school. And back in that day, 25 cents was a lot. And every week you turned in your 25 cents and you got a stamp. And when you got all the way through the book buying stamps, there was $18.75. And that was a full book. And you could exchange, it would be exchanged by the post office for a war bond. And all the children who could took part in it. And this one, I never filled up. I only got, it says $3, a total of $3 toward a war bond. But this is what a war bond book looked like. And we all did it. And also, when I was not ever old enough to be one, but there were junior commandos. And what the junior commandos did was, like on a Saturday, an adult would take the junior commandos to a wooded area, and they would go through the woods picking up anything made of metal and pile it up in big piles, and then trucks would come and get it. And those things were used to make guns and bullets and things like that. And I wanted to be a junior commando so bad, but I wasn't old enough. And the reason I wanted to be a commando was because they got a shirt that said Junior Commando on it. So everybody worked during the war, children and adults alike, to help with the war effort. And my dad, as soon as the war was declared, my dad tried to enlist in the army, but he was too old. He was 32 at the time, and that was too old to be a soldier. So on Sundays, he would go downtown to the train station, and if there were soldiers there waiting for a train to come and take them to camp or something, he would invite them to our house for dinner and bring them home, and they would have Sunday dinner with us, and then he would take them back to the train station. So everybody helped. And it was a bad time because it was wartime, but it was a good time because everybody worked together.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hope you learned something new.